Well, good morning to everyone and all those tuning in online. It's a joy to be with you. This is an auspicious week. Monday was Yogananda's Mahasamadhi, and Wednesday was Sri Yukteswar's Mahasamadhi within a couple of days of each other. And so we'll read from this beautiful poem from Whispers from Eternity honoring Sri Yukteswar, entitled, My Guru. Thou light of my life, thou camest to spread wisdom's glow over the path of my soul. Centuries of darkness dissolved before the shafts of thy luminous help. As a naughty baby, I cried for my mother divine, and she came to me as my guru, Swami Sri Yukteswar. At that meeting, O my guru, a spark flew from thee, and the faggots of my God craving, gathered through incarnations, smoldered and blazed into bliss. All my questions have been answered with thy flaming golden touch. Eternal, ever-present satisfaction has come to me through thy glory. My Guru, thou voice of God, I found thee in response to my soul cries. Slumbers of sorrow are gone, and I'm awake in bliss. If all the gods are displeased, yet thou art pleased. I am safe in the fortress of thy pleasure. And if all the gods protect me behind the parapets of their blessings, yet I receive not thy benedictions. I am an orphan, left to pine spiritually in the ruins of thy displeasure. O Guru, thou dost bring me out of the bottomless pit of darkness into the paradise of peace. Our souls met after years of waiting. They trembled with an omnipresent thrill. We met here because we have met before. Together, we will fly to his shores, where we will smash our planes of finitude forever and vanish into infinite light. I bow to thee as the spoken voice of silent God. I bow to thee as a divine door which leads to the temple of salvation. I bow to thee, to thy Master Lahiri Mahashaya, harbinger of yoga in Benares. And I lay the flowers of my devotion at the feet of Babaji, our Supreme Master. And from the Autobiography of Yogi, this is the opening chapter from Years in My Master's Hermitage. Sri Yukteswar, prior to this, had just, I should say, Yogananda just met Sri Yukteswar. They met each other. And this was, of course, a time of great, great joy for these highly advanced souls. But very, very interestingly, it ended with you might say, a sad note, because Sri Yukteswar wanted Yogananda to go back to Kolkata. And that, to Yogananda, was the last thing he wanted to do, because his brother and others in the family were saying, okay, go and look for the saints and so forth, but in the end, you'll end up with us. So he did not want to be ridiculed. And so he said to Sri Yukteswar, basically, no. And Sri Yukteswar wasn't very happy about this. And he said, you'll return in 30 days. And Yogananda said, never. So that's how they ended this. And Yogananda had vision after vision of Sri Yukteswar. He recognized him as his guru, and yet the good old Maya, this Leela, you just never know what's going to happen next. Well, so opens this chapter, and Yogananda is returning. You have come. Sri Yukteswar greeted me from a tiger skin on the floor of a balconied sitting room. His voice was cold, his manner unemotional. Yes, dear master, I'm here to follow you. Kneeling, I touched his feet. How can that be? You ignore my wishes. No longer, Guruji. Your wish shall be my law. That is better. Now I can assume responsibility for your life. I willingly transfer the burden, master. My first request then is that you return home to your family. I want you to enter college in Kolkata. Your education should be continued. Very well, sir. I hid my consternation. What would books pursue me down the years, first Father, and now Sri Yukteswar? Someday you will go to the West. Its people will lend ears more receptive to India's ancient wisdom if the strange Hindu teacher has a university degree. You know best, Guruji. My gloom departed. The reference to the West I found puzzling remote. But my opportunity to please Guru by obedience was vitally immediate. You will be near in Kolkata. Come here whenever you find time. Every day, if possible, Master. Gratefully, I accept your authority in every detail of my life on one condition. Yes, that you promise to reveal God to me. An hour-long verbal tussle ensued. A master's word cannot be falsified. It is not lightly given. The implications in the pledge opened out vast metaphysical vistas. A guru must be on intimate terms indeed with her. I sensed Sri Yukteswar's divine unity and was determined as a disciple to press my advantage. You are of an exacting disposition. Then Master's consent rang out with compassionate finality. Let your wish be my wish. Lifelong shadow lifted from my heart. The vague search hither and yon was over. I had found eternal shelter in a true guru. It wasn't just Sri Yukteswar that, or I should say Yogananda, that resisted initially his request from his guru. Yogananda's most advanced woman disciple, Sri Gyanamata, said, and I must admit I was a bit astonished when I read this years ago, she said it's hand-to-hand combat initially with the guru and the newly awakened disciple. Hand-to-hand combat. Now that's a serious affair. And we know because of the mind and the heart and all of the things we have to contend with, our karma especially, that for most, if you were spared, God bless you. Because as again, Yogananda said, if we could continue to be on this wonderful path, the honeymoon path, when we first got started, we would find God very quickly. But most don't have that blessing. Again, if you do, God bless you. It's very, very rare because we've had incarnations and this incarnation too of going our own way. My way or the highway has basically been our mantra for a long time. And whether it's dealing with our parents or our peers or our teachers or God knows who, we want to do what we want to do. It's kind of like two-year-old consciousness. We raised our daughter. She's now in her 30s in New York, and it's no longer the experience we were having early on, but we remember very well the terrible twos. When someone said the terrible twos, I said, that has a ring to it. And it's not that she was a bad girl. She wasn't, just highly charged. As Swami Kriyananda said of Rose, our daughter, it looks like she's about ready to explode out of her body. And I thought, well, that's not the only kid. Seems like every Ananda kid I've ever met, that's pretty much that description that I would have for all of them. And in a way, it's us as well, because we are now on the brink, because we have this driving desire to go inside and to really discover our true reality, that we're wanting to burst out and reclaim our native state of blissful omnipresence. And so, yes, in the beginning, hand-to-hand combat with the guru. When I first got on the path, prior to finding Ananda, because I didn't even know Ananda existed, I got on the path in the late 60s, and that's when Ananda was getting started. And so, not knowing how to meditate, I would just look at Yogananda's picture, which I do to this day, and I would go into a state of meditation. I didn't know what it was, but I enjoyed it. And so again and again and again, I would just look at his picture and I would talk to him. And sometimes there would be no words, and I would be comfortable with that and feel his vibration. And then a friend and I, we were going across the United States. We had just graduated high school and we had gone to Mexico and all of these things. And we were just having fun, spreading our wings. We'd left the nest. And I got the Autobiography of Yogi, and I would read a page or two and go into meditation. And I would kind of shake myself after a page or two. I think, well, what is this? It's similar to when I was just looking at his photo. And so this was my introduction. When I found Ananda, I felt like I was just floating in this wonderful heavenly atmosphere. And it lasted a few months. And I'm happy for that. And from time to time, it is a good thing to revisit this honeymoon period, that first person, that first book, whatever it was, to just drink in that vibration, because that was a very pure experience. Because in the beginning, and perhaps we've read about that, God does draw us in. It may be some superconscious experience. It may be any number of things, but we are drawn in. We are hooked, and we want God, and we want to find God, and we want to devote ourselves to spirit. But then after that, it does seem like, instead of, which initially was God throwing rose petals on our path, and we were just thinking, oh, this is what I was hoping it was to be. Now that I've spent so long trying to get on the path, now it's just roses. And then we found that our feet were bleeding a bit because the roses had some thorns in it. We thought, well, what is this? Doesn't make any sense. But bit by bit, in talking with others and so forth, we discovered that they were having similar experiences. What did that mean? Was that a withdrawal of energy? Absolutely not. But because we've been running away from God for so many incarnations, now he's playing hide and go seek with us. And that is his right. Because again, as Yogananda said, God will test. He will test us. He will test us many times, because he wants to see, do we finally at last love him more than these bodies and this world and the toys and all the things that come? Finally, are we at that point where we really just want God, and that we want to love the Lord our God with all our heart, mind, soul, and strength? Is that our true aspiration? So God wants to see, for sure, is that really where we're coming from? Is that where we are in our heart of hearts? And then, as God and the great ones are satisfied that that is truly where we're at, that we are sincere. Sincerity is very, very important on the spiritual path, along with devotion, that we are sincere. Then we're heartened, because, as Yogananda said, long before we go into that state of nirvikalpa samadhi, which is a permanent state, and we'll never fall from that. If we want to come down to this material plane, it'll only be to help. It won't because of desire drawing us back down. He said, long before we find God, there'll be these oases, there'll be this bliss. And we can begin to dream of Yogananda's state of consciousness. Is true of all of the saints. They have this state of consciousness. They're one with God, where, as he said, my life now is an unbroken inspiration. Incredible, unbroken inspiration. How is it possible that Ram Gopal, in the Autobiography of Yogi, could meditate 20 hours a day for decades, and 18 hours a day for decades? How is that possible? Well, he was in a high state of samadhi. Otherwise, you couldn't do it. Swami Pranamananda, with his friend, who would meditate all night long, disciples of Lahiri Mahashaya, and then go to work. Try it. Let me know how it goes. Again, in a high state of consciousness, supercharged, plugged in. And that's how they were able to be in this world, but not of it. Again, I don't know about you, but getting on the path, I battled with all of the gurus, except for Lahiri Mahashaya, which to me is a puzzle. I don't know what, maybe battling with him in previous incarnations, but I had no problem with him. The rest of them, absolutely. Sri Yukteswar, my gosh, he was the first one, battling with him. And yet, this line of gurus is very unique. Yogananda says, we're not connected to a printing press of all these gurus. This is a very, very historically unique experience to have this line of gurus, and then add to that Swamiji as an exalted direct disciple. And so we looked for clues, because I remember years ago, after I'd gone through this period of battling with all these guys, a friend came up to me and been on the path for some time, and he astonished me with a question, and I was a bit astonished by my answer. He said, can you feel that the vibration of the different gurus are different? I said, yes, I can. He said, you can? Well, why? Because I had battled with all of them. Every single one of them. And I'm not talking about a battle that lasted for an hour or for a day. In some instances, it lasted for years. Babaji was the last holdout, interestingly. Hard to believe. And now here in India, the land of Babaji and the great ones. But with Sri Yukteswar, I got a clue. And the clue was when Yogananda's nephew came to the States. And he had spent time with Sri Yukteswar, because Sri Yukteswar and Master's father were brother disciples. And so incredibly, Sri Yukteswar here in Calcutta would come to Master's home in 4 Gopal Road, where Master's nephew, who was just a teenager, Hare Krishna Ghosh, was there spending time with Sri Yukteswar. And he said, Sri Yukteswar, with everyone, especially the children, he would have candy in his pockets. I think Sri Yukteswar, he had candy in his pockets. Are you sure about, we're talking about the same guy? And give it out to the children. And then the image of Sri Yukteswar on Yogananda's motorcycle on the sidecar, and I thought, wow, that's amazing, and so forth. But bit by bit, although Hare Krishna did say when Sri Yukteswar was there at the house, all of us were on the alert. And I thought, okay, that I can relate to that very much. The candy coming out of the pockets, I'll have to work on that. But with each of the different gurus, and being raised, I'm Russian Jew, and my father's from San Francisco, my mother's, again, from Russia. So half Jewish, half Catholic. That in itself could have taken me all lifetime to figure that one out. And as I share with people, because it was difficult for me to figure it out, I just went surfing instead, and figured that in time, then maybe the waves would wash away any questions that I had. But Swami saved me. At one point, he said, when you're reading the Bible, which I couldn't even read in the beginning because I needed to tune into Christ, I would have the Bible on my chest. I wouldn't read it. This went on for a long time because, as Master said to Swami when Swami first met Master, this book, the Autobiography of a Yogi, has my vibrations. And Swami thought, vibrations? He couldn't understand that scientifically, yes, but what is this? So getting that clue, I would have the Bible there on my chest, and bit by bit, it was making some headway, thankfully. And then Swami saved me. He said, when you read the Bible, then think of the Master of Christ as a master of joy. And whenever I would go to church or something like that, then it would be always the wooden Indian, that Christ was, again, very unhappy, with whatever you were doing and so forth. Like the Sistine Chapel, where we went to and looked up and saw that famous hand of God coming down and just basically, blasting anyone that was in the near vicinity. And so, as Swamiji said, that many people think of Christ as, a very, very stern Sunday school teacher, and they're at a picnic and having no fun at all at the picnic, too busy disciplining the children, look out, don't get so close to the river, you'll drown or something. And so with each of the gurus, we need to really tune into all of them because they are helping us immeasurably. We don't know now. We're getting a glimpse each time we meditate, each time we do our selfless seva, each time we tune into these gurus. But at these times, these are auspicious times. Again, 2 Mahasamadhis within a couple of days of each other this week. These are the times to drink in the vibration, especially of these great ones. And in India, where again, it's hard to get any work done because there's always a holiday to prepare for, to participate in and recover from. And then it's the next one. And then it's the next one. And again, I just love it. It's just an amazing thing. Well, yes, we've got all of that. And these are powerful experiences. And then we have our gurus. And their birthdays and their Mahasamadhis are very, very, very powerful. Make no mistake about it. And so as we tune into these great ones, bit by bit, we no longer care to resist. Think of Swamiji's extraordinary experience, and because this was an extraordinary experience for him, and many, many times I've drawn upon this story of his, which perhaps you've heard as well. When he was founding Ananda, this was pre-Ananda, he was still in San Francisco, teaching in a different city every single night with radio programs and correspondence and so many things. It was just absolutely overload. And so he went to his mother's house in Atherton, which is in the San Francisco area. And his mother was actually afraid for him because he looked absolutely exhausted, and he was. And I said, okay. And he remarked to her that he had a class that night. And she said, call them, cancel. He said, how can I? I don't have all their phone numbers. So he went into the bedroom there in his mother and father's house. And he said at times that he was so exhausted. I don't know if you've had that experience. I have from time to time, where you're so exhausted, you can't sleep. Your eyes are just wide-eyed and your mind is churning. And so it was for him. And so he began thinking about all of these responsibilities he had. And he said, all the classes, can't somebody else do them? And he felt this wave of resistance for this responsibility. And he said, well, I might as well accept it because this is what I need to do. And so, very interestingly, he felt this beginning of a rise of energy through acceptance. He said, the radio programs, again, why can't someone else do the radio programs? Why should I have to do them? And again, feeling this huge wave of resistance. And then he thought, well, that's what I have to do. And he went through all of these things, and there were many of them, easily a dozen, maybe 24 of these activities, because as Yogananda said to Swami Kriyananda, your path is a path of intense activity. And so when finally he got through this exercise, which was really life-changing, he came out from his room, and his mother said, oh, you must have had such a refreshing sleep, because he looked just great. And he didn't say anything. And he went on, and very interesting, because Divine Mother has a sense of humor, the class was on energization. And he said it was the best class he ever gave. And he was up till 2 a.m, typing and all of that stuff, pre-computers, and doing, various, things that he had to do. Well, these great ones, again, Sri Yukteswar representing, the discipline and so forth. But I sometimes say to Yogananda, he has a Sri Yukteswar streak. And all of the gurus do, because sometimes they're manifesting, again, the father aspect. Although Yogananda says a mother is closer than the father, still, these great ones, when they need to discipline, they shirk from that, because all they want is to share unconditional love. But when they need to do that, they do that. But the rest of the time, then they are the mother. Even Sri Yukteswar is just the mother. All of them are. They all drink from the same fountain. Remember, perhaps you've heard when Brother Norman, who was a brother disciple of Swami Kriyananda, and he said to Yogananda at one point, this was late 40s, early 50s, he said, when I see you speaking to the Guru, I see Divine Mother. So what was Yogananda's response? He pulled out his cane and he tapped him on the knee and he said, well, then act accordingly. Because he was in that high state, he had the right to say that. It wasn't an affirmation. It wasn't coming from ego. He was one with Divine Mother, and he didn't need the cane. He had the cane just to ground him. That was all. Because he said, where you're just leaving off in meditation, I'm just beginning. So these great ones, it takes an enormous amount of will for them to relate to where we are on this level of transition, where we are in a state of perfection as a school. We have to acknowledge that really every day. That's why Yogananda said, memorize my poem Samadhi. But again, we need to keep our head in the clouds and our feet on the ground, because we also are in transition as human beings, as we're working out our karma and trying to draw to the best of our ability, as Yogananda recommended, meet each test graciously, because everything comes to us from God and everything is meant to help us. And you have to have an incredibly good attitude, and that's really the spine of the spiritual path, right attitude, to really be able to accept that everything that comes from God is to help us. It's easier when 10 years passes. Yes, that was a good thing when I was being clobbered. I can see it now. I was on my high horse and it was needed. But can we do it now? When we get run over by some karmic experience, can we do it now? Well, we're getting better at it. We're getting better at it because we're feeling more and more a smile of the Guru and the great ones in our own hearts. And that smile never fades. Remember, and what an incredible lesson this was with Dr. Lewis, his first disciple in America, Yogananda's first disciple. What did Yogananda say after he asked Dr. Lewis to give him his unconditional love? And Dr. Lewis said yes, he would. And then he said, Dr. Lewis, I ask you one thing, don't avoid me. And Dr. Lewis, a man to a good sense of humor, he said, sometimes it was really hard. Here comes the Guru, run, quick, hide behind a tree. You know, he's gonna ask me to do something like Dr. Lewis one time with a group of others, and Dr. Lewis's wife was there in Encinitas, Yogananda's ashram by the ocean in Southern California. And so they had brought home a watermelon. And so Yogananda, and this was getting, late, time for bedtime, announced that, why don't we make watermelon pickle? Now, you guys would know about that. I don't, but apparently it takes a long, long time. And he specifically wanted Mrs. Lewis to engineer the project. So, half an hour or so, went on. And she started to see that people were starting to leave. Dr. Lewis. And so, she said, she was irritated. She asked me to do this. It's a big job. I'm going to be up all night. And what did Dr. Lewis say? Well, you better finish the job. And he left too. My God, hard to imagine. I'm sure he got a talking to later. And what was the net result of that experience? Angie did stay up all night, and she said, never again did she ever suffer from fatigue. And so these great ones, whether it's Sri Yukteswar disciplining Yogananda when he tripped over a rug there in the ashram, when he was there in training prior, what did you? And everyone burned there at the time, and Yogananda to himself, you don't have what I have. And he because he knew why he came. He came for God. And that's why this reading from the Autobiography of Yogi is so special. I'm happy to take everything on that you give me. Yogananda in his heart of hearts said to Sri Yukteswar, and of course Yogananda was already free, so this experience of this guru-disciple relationship was of course just for us. But you must guarantee me that you'll help me to find God, that I will find God with your had that realization. He was awake in God. And so for us, celebrating Sri Yukteswar's Mahasamadhi, it's good to pause and appreciate that again during these times. You would think that after COVID, we would have gotten a break. How much more do we have to learn in this process of purification? A war on top of that. And yet, Divine Mother knows what she's doing in this process of purification. And we have to keep in mind that we parachuted down in order to help. That's why we've come to this earth. And that's why we have an inner life, because when you have an inner life, you have the potential to be supercharged, where we needn't run out of energy because we know where our energy comes from. We're just instruments. And so this is a time, especially when we want to let go and let God, get out of the way, not thinking about our worries and problems and so forth. Use all that energy wisely to send to the Ukraine, to send to this world, to flood this world with healing power. That's what's required now, to get out of the way. And that's the fruit of the whole purification process. Because why is God purifying all of us? And that's all of us in this world, all the many billions, because God is coaxing us back into the light. That's the only reason. There's no other reason. And it appears to be a pretty harsh measure, but nevertheless, at this point in time, that's what's required. So we have to be good sports. And so let's drink in the Mahasamadhi of these two great souls, as described by Yogananda. They're one light in two bodies. Let's drink in this vibration and know that underneath all personality, ours, the great ones, is this river of joy, is this river of unconditional love. That's what we have to tap into. And that's what meditation is all about. And that's why Swami Kriyananda says, I don't know how people can live without meditation. Because in meditation, especially daily practice, we drink in that pure reality. And then we bring that blessing out to others. Because again, it's not enough for us, as Swami Kriyananda said in his later years, and he was swimming in bliss. He said, even now, I don't really care about my own realization. My driving desire is to help others. Like, oh my gosh, after all these years, and he suffered quite a lot in this incarnation, bliss then was his reward. But even then, he was happy to put his own liberation to the side in order to help others. Now, that's because the fruit of growing compassion is bliss, is the desire to share. So, happy Sri Yukteswar's Mahasamadhi, happy Yogananda's Mahasamadhi. And again, all the many festivals and celebrations we're going to be having this year. God bless India, again, the guru of this world. So let's stand and we'll have our Aarti and blessing.
Would like to, all of us, do this affirmation. And it's from all of Ananda. We say this every Sunday now because of the situation in this world. So please repeat after me. A lot of energy and a lot of love.
With the sword of faith in my hand.
With the love of God in my heart.
With the love of God in my heart.
I am a warrior of light. I join my brothers and sisters everywhere.
I join my brothers and sisters everywhere.
To overcome fear with faith.
To overcome fear
with love. And disease with health. Fill the world with God's light. More quietly around me. And with the I'm a warrior of light. I join my brothers and sisters everywhere. To overcome fear with faith. Hatred with love. And disease with. Let us fill the world with light and around me. Faith in my hand. With the love of God in my heart. I'm a warrior of light. I join my brothers and sisters everywhere. To overcome hatred with love and disease with health. Let us fill the world with God's light. Now with deep concentration at the spiritual eye, God's light is around me, with the sword of faith in my hand, with the love of God in my heart. I am a warrior of light. I join my brothers and sisters everywhere to overcome fear with faith, hatred with love, and disease with health. Let us fill the world with God's light. Om Shanti, Shanti, Shanti. Amen. And now let's visualize this world and all souls in it. All those on our healing prayer lists, our families, our children, co-workers, everyone on this earth in need of God's light. Visualize every soul radiant with health, harmony, love, and goodwill. And visualize this planet healthy and radiant with God's love. Let's pray together. Divine Mother,
Divine Mother,
thou art omnipresent.
thou art omnipresent.
Thou art in all thy children.
Thou art in all thy children.
Thou art in this world.
Thou art in this world.
Thou art in all souls.
Thou art in all souls.
Manifest thy healing presence
Manifest thy healing presence
in all bodies,
in all bodies,
in all minds,
in all minds,
and in all souls.
in all souls.
Oh. Divine Mother, may thy love shine forever
May thy love shine forever
on the sanctuary of my devotion,
on the sanctuary of my devotion.
and may I be able
And may I be able
to awaken thy love
to awaken thy love
in hearts
in
everywhere.
hearts everywhere.
Om
Oh.
Shanti Shanti. Joy.